far more comprehensive. It needs to be less exclusive and more inclusive about the various sources that sit out there, which tells people about what goes on in a particular country.
I used to always advise that you check, if you're going to the Far East, check what Australia says or what the Americans say, just to get a balance of everything rather than just stick to ours.
That's exactly what I do, but exactly what I say to consumers is don't just stick with the Foreign Office advices, even with the newly revamped ones, if this is what they're going to do. I'll be saying exactly the same thing. Look at other countries' advices, look at other European countries' advices to their citizens. But I also go further and I say, look, check out the local newspapers. There are plenty of English newspapers in many destinations and resorts, and understand what goes on in these resorts. And even if I'm flying further afield, I always check the flight tracker before I book my flight to see if it's going to fly over any kind of contested territory or any difficult territory. And that sometimes guides me on which airline I will fly with. But I think out of all of this, certainly since Tunisia, it's unfortunate, but in the absence of things that should be more comprehensive in the FCO advices and indeed in brochures, I'm afraid consumers are going to have to become their own risk assessors. They're going to have to do a lot more research before they even book their holidays.
And somebody who wrote a book about travel, whose name escaped me, says always set up a Google alert for your destination so you get news coming in to you while you're waiting to go.
He's a very wise man, John.
I think he is, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter @holiday_hut. This week I've been talking travel consumer rights and travel security with Frank from Holiday Travel Watch. If you've ever used Holiday Travel Watch to help you out when you've had a bad holiday experience, please do share your story at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. That's the Facebook page where I'll be putting links for other conversations I've had with Frank over the last few years, and also how you can find out more about Holiday Travel Watch. It can't be a chat with Frank without talking to him about the Package Travel Directive that's going through the EU, and of course that does depend on whether the UK stays in the EU or not. To me, I think it's quite good. It nearly covers everything I would like to see. There could be some ways round it for travel companies, which may take a test case to sort out. I have spoken to the EU about this. There are ways, if you're booking holidays and not selling holidays, you can get round it, as I understand the requirements. And I'm not too sure whether the new story from Ryanair about becoming a holiday provider and not just a flight provider has got anything to do with the administration that's involved with the Package Travel Directive if it ever becomes law. But anyway, that's enough about me going on about it. My guest should be telling us what he feels about it, so let's hear what Frank has to say about the Package Travel Directive.
Well, the current Package Travel Directive that we're operating under, which is manifested under the Package Travel Regulations, is a good regulation, but it actually is approaching its sell-by date with the way in which we book and organise our holidays. The new Package Travel Directive, which has been published last year, and has to be implemented by 2018 by all member states, changes a lot of the ground rules. So many of the so-called DIY holidays will be caught by the regulations, and they will be classed as package holidays, and that will mean that many more consumers will enjoy the protection. So significant change rights before departure, risk destinations, say when you have a situation like say like Egypt or Tunisia arise, giving consumers the right to cancel and stuff like that. There's also those holidays that will sit outside the package environment. It was something that we argued for very strongly with the Commission. We said basically we don't mind how you want to sell your holidays. But if you're going to sell a holiday that isn't a package holiday and therefore has no obligation under the directive, then you should say so. You should tell consumers through warning notices, almost like health warnings, that you are buying a product that actually doesn't offer you full protection, which is this consumer protection point I made earlier. And the Commission has agreed. And so if you're going to sell a DIY type holiday, you have to give warning notices. You have to give these health notices. And I think that's actually very sensible. So that consumers can, make up their own minds about whether they want to open themselves to that environment or stick with the regulated product. I think the big thing for me is the financial protection. It was the disappointments. I realized a couple of years ago that in this new directive we weren't going to get a pan-European financial protection scheme. I think that's a big mistake, but the imperative is about subsidiarity and proportionality, and member states being free to be able to do what they think is best in their members' interest. But that is a contradiction, if you like, as to how the single market is going to grow. You can't grow a single market with all sorts of separate rules running around the place. So I think it's a case of watch this space. Pan-European financial protection scheme will come, and possibly, sadly, come after consumers have been bitten by the single market free-for-all. And that area really does need addressing. But as I say, that's the way the directive has been constructed. We have to get it in. All member states have to have it on the law books by 2018. But for us here in the UK, if we vote to leave the European Union, it is very possible that that will not happen, because those who espouse less regulation will not be persuaded, in my view, to implement any European law, and I cannot see that they will devote parliamentary time to create an English package travel regulation.
Checking it out before you check in on the John Guinn Travel Show on ukhealthradio.com. So even after 21 years, holiday travel watch is still needed. But if a genie was to come up to you and give you 3 wishes, what would they be?
Right, okay. I think my primary one has to be that there has to be a pan-European regulation, and regulation can mean standards, I don't care how it manifests itself, on safety and holiday accommodation. Huge topic. That's why I was in Brussels a few days ago. And there is a political football game going on at the moment, particularly around our referendum, which unfortunately has stymied that progress. But we as an organisation are working on a strategy to actually hopefully advance that conversation. So my second one would be that Westminster needs to wake up, and they talk a lot about how they want powers returned to Westminster. They've already got enough powers as it is, and they frankly don't use them. There is, it's almost like, it doesn't matter which political flag is flying. There's, for the majority of MPs, there are some very good ones down there, by the way, but the majority of MPs, they operate or consensually without having regard to what is needed by consumers, by citizens. And that concerns me. That concerns me for the future if we're going to end up being reliant on them, because I actually have to say I've seen no real benefit come out of Westminster for consumers that has been Westminster driven. ever since I've been working down there since about 2006. So it needs to wake up and needs to listen to what people need. And I suppose my third wish would be that tourism and its infrastructure, it's unfortunately maybe a flight of fancy at the moment, but that tourism receives less threats, receives far less, in fact, no attacks at all. It's not a product, it's not an area that should be subjected to attacks. If there is any kind of semblance of political argument in the criminals that commit these offences, then you don't attack, you persuade. You don't attack the livelihoods of innocent people, and you certainly don't attack the lives of those people who contribute into the tourism product. And so I would wish that we see a world that moves towards a time when tourism isn't faced with that, and tourism produces the kind of benefits that will bring a lot of benefits to many people.
So finally, how can we find out more about Holiday Travel Watch?
Well, John, people can come to our website, which is all the W's, holidaytravelwatch.com, or indeed they can visit our Facebook page, or indeed they can speak to me on Twitter. And my Twitter handle is @HGWFrank.
Okay, well, great. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome, John.
Well, that's the end of this week's show. I hope you found the information of Frank Brehany from Holiday Travel Watch was informative and helpful. I always do enjoy a conversation with Frank. We do get to chinwag quite a lot, so much so that I've had to carry 2 topics over to next week's show. So listen in next week, you find out what Frank feels about the recent court case where the council lost their appeal against fining a father who took his kid out of school during term time. And to follow on from my last 2 shows where I've been doing about skin cancer and sun protection, we'll find out what Frank feels that travel companies should do when it comes to protecting their consumers. If you've had a bad holiday and you've had to take action over it, I'd be grateful if you could share your story at facebook.com/John Guinn Travel Show. Let us know if you were happy with the resolution from your travel company or if you wasn't. It'd be good to see how travel companies deal with things. I remember a trip I had in Mexico, my first ever long haul holiday years ago, before I was in the travel trade and I didn't know any better, and everybody got ill, and the holiday rep just said it was our own fault for overdoing stuff, which we really didn't. It was the hotel poisoning us, but never mind. I know better, so if it happens again, then I know what to do. Not only will Frank be sharing a little bit more information next week, I'll be talking to somebody who films adventure travel. And we'll be talking about a adventure film travel festival that's coming up shortly. So do join me next week on the Travel Show with John Guinn on ukhealthradio.com, where each week I'm checking it out before you check in.